Hey guys, welcome back. Chapter 5, Data Modeling. Today's accountants must understand how business processes generate data and how those data are structured, interrelated, and stored in a database system. So, one thing we did at Colonial that we would use Access, and we would have to know the tables in order to be able to know how to pull certain information, the unique identifiers, and try to pull in the queries that we needed. Without that was sort of using SQL. Without having that knowledge, we would not be able to get to the information we needed. So, understanding the unique identifiers you set up on a GL string when you're entering a journal entry, those can be important when you start trying to pull data sets together. It's important to understand how the data is structured in order to be able to get the type of data you need. To ensure that business processes in the database systems are documented and to participate in improvements to processes and systems, accountants must understand and be able to model such systems. This chapter describes data modeling. It explains how data models support database driven systems. It introduces basic data modeling tools to guide the student's development of modeling skills. Finally, it discusses business rules and how the identification of relevant business rules support both process and data modeling. Um, Structure models describe the data and information structures that are inherent in a business process or processes. The primary purpose of those models is to create a blueprint for the development of relational database to support the collection, aggregation, and communication process information. So here we are, we're talking about relationship databases. So you may have a customer number over here with certain information in it, and you may have a customer number here with cost information in it. So you can marry the two sets. Uh, so I had a situation at a real estate company where I was the controller at, and there was a big fight going on between the procurement department, procurement VP versus the sales VP. And so they were the procurement guy was saying, I mean, these guys would get in the room and they'd yell at each other and walk out. I mean, they were mad. Like the procurement guy kept telling the sales guy, "You keep giving away all our discounts. You know, that's why we're not making profit margins. You keep giving them away as incentives on the sales price. You're knocking them off there." And then the sales guy would look at the procurement guy and say, "No, no, 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 no. You're buying bad materials. Your materials are costing too much. We're losing money because you're paying too much for the materials." And they were pointing at each other. One guy said, "You're paying too much." One guy says, "You're not charging enough." And it was cramping our margin. And they were going at each other. Um, I mean, it was sort of funny. They were going at each other trying to figure this out. And so I took all the data that was in the general ledger, and I ran a multiple regression. I used statistics, and I did a correlation to try to determine where we were losing money on the sales price. So I plugged in a lot of variables, ran that analysis, and I was able to present it at our leadership meeting. And so the fun part was we found out that no, sales price, that really wasn't the biggest factor, that we're giving away numbers. I mean, yes, the sales price has an impact on what we charge profitable. It does, but that's true. But part of the game in real estate is you do give some incentives away, and that encourages new home buyers. Um, Likewise, on the procurement side, the procurement, we found out that no, it's actually pretty consistent across all models. That's really not impacting our net profitability. So I was able to prove that the procurement guy was actually doing his job, and I was able to prove that the sales guy really was doing his job as well. It wasn't really either one. What I found out was it was land development. So land development was actually the one who would buy the land. And the problem is when you buy a plot of land, you can't determine whether or not there's rock under that ground. It's real hard to do. And so they pick a piece of land, and sometimes you start digging and there's rock, and that adds to the cost of things. So what we started learning is that the way we were selecting land, depending on where that land was and depending on if it was rocky, that was actually impacting the profitability of the homes more than any other variable. So it got these guys sort of, off of each other's throats. And then we actually saw what the problem is. But had I not been able to go in there and figure that out by the numbers, we had war going on. And see, that's what numbers, everybody points fingers and they don't know the answer. But as an accountant, it's our job to get to the bottom of the answer. And so when you take the data and you pull it apart and you start analyzing it, then you can sit there and look and you can see this is what's driving it, this is what's causing it. So, for more than 50 years, data models have been used to represent conceptual contents of databases to communicate with the users of those databases. For example, Charles Bachman developed data structure diagrams known as the Bachman diagrams in the 60s. Using a similar notation, Peter Chin developed entity relationship modeling in the 76 to describe the entities like people, things, and events, and the relationships among entities and databases. Since then, a number of others have offered a variety of notations to describe the elements of databases, but the concepts in all variations are similar. So, a model of logical database structures must be able to describe the entities or things in the domain of interest, the relationships among those things, the cardinalities that describe how many instances of one entity can be related to another, and the attributes or characteristics of the entities and relationships. So, this is all sort of a precursor to what happens in the business world, and why you've got to learn how to model the data. You've got to learn what the relationships are between the data and the different data sets. And the only way to really do that is talk to your computer guys, but get in and look at the tables, look at the way the data is set up. You need to memorize those tables, especially the ones that are relevant, and then that helps you be able to pull the data when you need it. And I'm telling you, it makes you look smart. But you got to get into the data tables in order to be able to get those relationships. There's a lot of information stored. It's just people don't know how to get to it. So if you can figure out the back end, how it's set up and how it's laid out in the tables, you can really end up pulling some information together. So that's what I want to share with you today. Um, again, hope you guys have a great week. Do all your assignments and quizzes and discussion board. Make sure you get everything in. And if you need anything from me, just reach out. God bless.